Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show.
All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Rick today. Rick's an individual that reached out to me after I had a interview that had included some accounts over by the Chehalis Reservation. And he reached out and said, I have some interesting things to add about that area as well. So, Rick, I'm glad you're on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Jeremiah.
Absolutely.
I got a number of incidents that happened in this area. We moved up to that area in March of 2022. And although I'm familiar with all of Washington State, I wasn't too familiar with this area. Anyway, we started having incidences on our property. Behind our property, if you went directly behind us, 30 miles of woods, we'd end up in Oakville. Of course, if you went a little more west of that, be 40 miles of woods all the way basically to Westport. And then to the right of us, it's all woods too, basically for miles. And we got Capitol Forest actually in front of us. So we're kind of like in a really unique area here. But in May of 2022, the first incident I had was I was on my tractor and was clearing some property out front. And I'd taken a break and the woods were behind me. Our house, we got woods completely around, but the woods behind the house, they're on the side of the house. I was sitting there and all of a sudden the wife brings me a drink and she leaves and I was sitting there on my tractor and of course there's nothing above me. There's fir trees to the right, to the left and nothing. And all of a sudden I hear a rock come up and it hit the front of my tractor right on the hood. A small rock, just a little bigger than a pebble. And so I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of weird. And I'm looking at, in the sky and I don't see no birds and, it wasn't a pine cone. And so I'm sitting there and all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe 15 seconds later, come another one and almost landed in the exact same spot on the tractor. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And before I could do anything else, here come another one. And it hit it again. And I thought, wow. And so I just raised my hand, said, hello, started my tractor. And I drove off from here. It kind of startled me. And then, we didn't have much going on until June. Every month, it's like we have something going on. But June, we were down at the creek. And it was in the morning, early morning, the wife and I, and the creek runs right behind our house. And we're sitting there. And all of a sudden, the neighbor's rooster, we got one neighbor to us, to the right of us, and that rooster crows over there from his chicken coop. And then we hear a rooster crow in the woods, but you could tell it wasn't a rooster, you could tell it was a mimic. And so we're sitting down there and we're hearing this going on, and then the rooster crow, and then all of a sudden we hear it again in the woods. And so we started going down in the evening. And the owls, she would hoot, my wife would hoot, and then the owls would hoot, and then you can actually bring them in right to you, by doing that. And then we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we hear a baby crying. And we got cougar, all over our property. We got so many animals, it's unreal, so much wildlife. And so I know what a cougar sounds like, and this wasn't the same, but it actually wasn't a baby crying either, but, that's what it was mimicking. It was really strange. And that was coming directly behind the house. And July, heard a lot of whooping, jibber jabber in the woods next to our house. That's kind of a normal thing for us all year round. And in August of 2022, my son, he drives in the driveway and he stops, gets out of his vehicle. And we hear this crazy howling and screaming coming from the woods across the street. And he goes, Dad? I go, yeah. And he goes, what's that? And I go, I don't know. Take your best guess, And he's like, wow, I never heard that before. And so that same month, a buddy of mine came to visit me for a while, and he had a big motorhome. And so we found a spot for him, parked him out front. And in front of our house, our driveway kind of loops around, but we got woods between us and the road too. And then there's woods, beyond that, it's Capitol Forest. But he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he's hearing rocks being thrown at him. Well, he gets up in the morning, he comes into the house, and he goes, "What are you doing, messing with me?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, throwing rocks at my motorhome. And I go, "Dude, why would I throw rocks at your motorhome?" And he goes, "Well, someone's been throwing rocks at my motorhome all night." So we go out to his motorhome and climb the ladder in the back. And sure enough, on top of his motorhome, there's all these rocks sitting there. And I think, wow. And then I didn't witness this, but he drove in one night, him and his girlfriend. It was kind of late, like, I don't know, 1:32 in the morning, something like that. And he sees two juvenile Sasquatch, and he said they were only about 3 foot tall. And his girlfriend was never a believer of Sasquatch and everything else. And it was two juveniles playing with each other, running in circles right there on, right in front of their motorhome. And so they sat in their car, and it didn't seem to bother them when they drove in. And so they shut the lights off, and they shut the car, and they sat there and they watched them. And then pretty soon they just, they took off and they went out back into the woods. And I was thinking, wow, that's kind of strange, and so that's really, I guess, the first, thing that brought any confirmation to me at all that we had something we were dealing with out there, and so, and then let's see, in October of 2022, we were down at the creek again. It was later in the evening. It was after dark. Sometimes we go down there and show hoot and bring Owl in, because we bring him in real close. Sometimes we'll sit down and talk and we'll listen, and all of a sudden we hear this huge tree just go crash, and I thought, wow, that must, just one. I figured it was a dead one that just fell over. There's no wind or anything like that, and of course there's nobody around us out there. So, and then right after that, we heard whooping, and then we heard tree knocks. So next morning, I go hiking out there, and sure enough, I find this live fir tree about 3 foot and maybe 2.5 feet in diameter. It's totally pushed over, not another tree fallen or anything else. The roots, to the point the roots came out of the ground, snapped right out of the ground, and that's about probably 100 yards in from to our house. And then November, about late October, usually beginning of November, mid-November, the salmon start running up our creek out back. And that's when we always hear a lot going on in November. It's like they're having a good time out there, woods. We're hearing whooping, tree knocks, jibber jabber, just all kinds of, and it's like they're having a good time, like they're eating good and everything's, is really good. And so anyway, we're used to that pretty much. And then, so right after that, in November, a buddy of mine came over and we took a hike over to the property, the woods to the right of us there. And we could see big prints, but they were hard to make out, but you could tell. You could tell their actual footprint. And I found more on the property after that too. And then actually in January of 2023, it snowed just a little bit. And I was walking out, our driveway kind of circles around, and I was walking out to the right side of the driveway there, going up to the road. And here I find this print, and I've got pictures of it, and it's 19 inches long and 9 inches wide. There's actually 3 of them, but the one is just perfect. I could put my finger in each one of the toes, and all 5 toes, and feel the roundness of them in there. Buried inside. And it is in a spot that's it's pretty hard ground there, and it was sunk in about 1.5 inches, that one print. And then you could see another one about 6.5, maybe 7 feet stride, an imprint, but it wasn't as good as that first one. Then a third one, and that kind of blew me away there. And so we know we've been dealing, having incidences with them the whole time while we've been out here. And I've always been a believer, and I had an incident when I was probably 14, 15 years old. And so I've always been a believer of Sasquatch and everything else. I started studying a little more and getting to know a little more about them to understand. And so in May of 2023, we're sitting there, a friend of mine's over, and him and his family are over for dinner. And I think we were working on a lawnmower or something, the four-wheeler. We're working on a four-wheeler. His kids are going to ride it. And all of a sudden, we get this scream that comes across behind the creek in the woods, and it carries on for over a minute. It's like and but it's a scream. And we're just both looking at each other and going, what? And all of a sudden it just went, and I mean, there's no way a human has got the lung capacity to do that. I mean, for that length of time. And it was just a steady note when it started. And it was just a steady scream. And I mean, that was just crazy. I mean, it's just like, wow, what the heck, who could do that, So then, let's see, June of 2023, this is what scared my wife. I mean, just really bad. She had let the dogs out. It's nighttime. It's probably about 10 o'clock at night and maybe 11. I was in bed sleeping, so I didn't hear it. But she's letting the dogs out, and all of a sudden she hears this roar, and it's close. I mean, it's from our driveway to the woods in the front of our house. It's probably maybe 30 yards, 40 yards, and then we got a little wood patch there, and then it goes to the road, and it was right across the road on the other side of those woods there, or the woods right in front of before the road, in our driveway, on the other side of our driveway. But this roar that I guess it was guttural. I mean, she could feel it inside her body, she said, and the dogs came running in the house, straight inside into the bedroom, into the corner where they got their little beds made, and just jumped in their beds, and we're just shivering. And she locked the doors, and she woke me up, and she goes, you got to hear what I just heard. Of course, I didn't hear anything, and never did it again. And then, probably 6 months later, a friend of mine came to visit, and he lives quite a ways away. He's on his Harley, and so he's leaving in the next morning. And so we were out in our driveway, talking to him, and all of a sudden, we hear this roar again, and in the same area. And I mean, it was just, inside, I heard it this time, and we all did, and it was just guttural roar. I mean, it's beyond a scream, and you could just, it reverbed from your body. You could just feel it, and it's like, whoa. And he looks at me and he goes, that ain't normal. And I go, I know it, man. And he goes, I'm out of here. So he took off, and we went back into this house, It was just, I've never heard anything like that in my life. And that's what my wife said. That's exactly what she had heard back in June. July, we had July of 2023. I write all these down. I don't really got the date down, but I just started writing and making a little ledger here of just all the incidents that we have. And in July of 2023, we were hearing hollering coming from the woods to the right of us, wood knocks, all month long, basically, and on and off. It's nothing, to exact date or anything. I mean, to the, whatever hours, it's just on and off. We were hearing that constantly. We hear that all the time. I mean, it's something that just goes on. It usually slows down right around December, January sometimes, but then again, we've had incidences 12 months out of the year. Let's see, in August of 2023, that's when we rode at, and that's then. In September, I find large footprints in the woods across the street in front of our house. And they were pretty plain to see. I mean, they're easy to make out. And there was 3 of them. And they were smaller prints. They were probably, I think, let's see, what have I got written here? They were 17 inches by 8 inches, those prints were. And you think I'm all set up now, but both times I thought I'm a contractor by trade, and I thought, well, let's go get some plaster Paris or, fix all something in mold, and I didn't have any of it. So now I do. I have it there for the next time, but to make some prints. In October of 2023, the salmon were running up our creek, and again, we were hearing whoops, hollering, tree knocks, jibber jabber all month long, and it's like they're playing out there, It's like they're getting fed well and they're enjoying it. And every October, November, it's what we hear. It's just like they're having a good time. And so December 2023, it's like Christmas, and it was Christmas, and the kids are over, and so they're inside, and I'm bringing some wood out. We've got a wood shed behind the house. So the wood shed there. We also got a room extension off of our house here back there with sliding glass door, and it's got a awning off the front, wood awning, but the awning's only about 8 foot tall, so it's kind of just an area. So I'm sitting there, and I'm loading wood in a cart, and all of a sudden this rock pebble comes in and smacks. It bounces off the sliding glass door right in front. I mean, the rock came right beside of me and then hit the sliding glass door. And I thought, and it's dark out there. I mean, it's black at night out there. It's just crazy dark every night. And I'm like, wow. And then all of a sudden, boom, something hits the ground. Now, directly behind me is about 20 feet to a ledge that drops down. On that part, drops down to about 15, 20 feet down to the water, to the creek. So whatever threw that rock had to be from where I was, straight across, to be able to come underneath that awning like that, 8 feet under that awning and hit, had to been in a tree across the stream. And it jumped out. That's the only way that rock could have hit in there like that. Because, I mean, the way the woods are and the way the drop-off is, to be level with that sliding glass door across the creek, you'd have to be in a tree probably 20 feet in the air. And all of a sudden, I'm sure that's where it was. And all of a sudden, the ground, it hit it so hard, the ground actually, I could feel a vibration off the ground. And I said, oh, that was too much, So I went in the house and I told everybody what had happened. They looked at me, what's wrong, Dad? And I said, wow, what had happened. We just laughed it off. But I've never had anything personally of any of us tried to be, harmful in any way, or never felt threatened by any of it. It lets us know that, they're there, and that's for sure. I mean, there's no question about that. So in April of 2024, my wife, she's taking a walk, and if you come out of our driveway to the right, and there's a big pond over there that you got to you can't see it from our place, but you got to hike into the woods like for about 100 yards. It's about that size of half of a football field, So anyway, she's taking a walk over there, and this is in the afternoon, and she finds a nest. She says it looks like a nest, but everything we've seen on shows. And it's a big fir tree where the branches, like 12 feet in the air, have been busted down, but not off. They've just been bent down and all the way around on that one side of the tree. And then you could see where they brought in boughs and from the other trees, like there's from cedars and things like that are laid up as a wall. And they've created this little area inside, and she thought it was probably a nest. And that's what it looked like, but small. I mean, they could fit in there, but they'd have to crawl inside, and be in there. Well, so next month later after that, I'm walking just 100 yards from there to the north of that, and I find another one, and it's actually been built. You can tell the other one's kind of probably like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years old. This one here is only a couple years old, and now granted, this is only 50 yards off our driveway. There's another one of these, and I took pictures of them, and they're still standing to this day. But it's a newer one. You could tell it's not as far gone. And so I was, watching shows. I'm thinking, we're thinking it's a nest, but we're watching this one show, and it was showing this same type of structure, and they figured it was a blind for deer, a deer blind, and that makes more sense. Because we have mass animals, we have deer like every night on our property. There's six deer, especially in the summertime. We have 6 deer out there in our property all the time. I mean, to the point that they're actually tame. I mean, my friend's out and he bends over and he's working on his rig, and he gets nudged in the back and looks over and there's a 6-point buck there, nudged him in the butt. I mean, it's crazy, the animal life that we have. And so it makes sense that that's what it was. It's a deer blind where they were, actually sitting and probably for hunting, And that's the only thing I can really make of it. But from that show, we saw it and we thought, yeah, that's definitely what it is. And also, here's a strange one here. This is June of this year. This is June of this year. We're in bed, we're sleeping, and our windows in our house, like in the bedroom windows, they sit real low. So, if you're outside, about waist height or below is the bottom of our window, and it goes almost to the top of the wall. So they're real tall windows that come low in the one side of the house there. And we always sleep in the summertime and it's warm. So we always sleep with the window shade half open and with the window open, just to keep it cool in there. And I get woke up by Lori and she's whispering and she goes, what's that smell? And it smelled like a garbage dump. And it was right outside our window. I mean, right outside our window. And I'm sitting there and I just woke up and I'm trying to get my thoughts together here, and wake up and she's kind of shaking, and I said, Lori, I whispered to her, I said, that's a squatch. I said, just be quiet. And I said, let's just sit here and listen. And of course we both fell back asleep again. Woke up in the morning and the smell's gone and I go outside the window to look and it's really weird dirt out here. I mean, it's like a clay dirt, and of course it's summertime, so it's the ground's hard. I could see sort of something indented the ground there, but it wasn't enough to make out any tracks. But I'm sure we had a squatch right at our window, and I was looking inside, and that was kind of blew us away. After a while, you get kind of used to it, and I mean, like I said, nothing's ever threatening, but they're the back of our. Like the kitchen, the back of the house, that faces all the woods to the creek, and the 30 miles out. And we have no curtains on those windows at all, or any blinds at all. And so at nighttime, we're always, if they're out there, which I'm sure they are, and I believe, this is what I truly believe, I believe that we're like a movie to them. Like we sit down and watch a movie. I actually believe that they're out in the woods sitting there just watching us, and I can feel it on sometimes that hair on my back of my neck stands up, and I, lights are on in the house, and I'm sure they can sit out there and are watching, and I'm sure they are. It's kind of crazy, but like I said, I'm not threatened. We're not threatened in any way. At kind of first, it's kind of disturbing, but you just kind of get used to it after a while. Let's see here. Oh, Lori and my wife and my granddaughter are down at our granddaughter are down at the creek, and this is right before dusk in the evening, and they're down there taking a walk. And I always told Lori, I says, if you have an incident down there and I'm not around, I says, just be nice and wave, and talk to whatever and walk away. And so anyway, they're down there and then they get small rocks thrown at them, not at them, but in the creek. And they're right on the creek. And they're landing like 3 feet in front of them. And there's like 4 of them that dropped. And the granddaughter goes, what's that? Who's throwing those rocks, Grandma? And she goes, oh, I don't know, maybe Sasquatch. And so I said, well, what'd you do? She's telling me a story. And I said, well, what'd you do? And she goes, I just looked up and I waved at him. I said, hello. And we just turned around and we slowly walked back to the house. And I said, well, that's perfect. That's the thing to do, And so in August 2024, because we had a lot of mimicking out there on owls at the creek in the evening. We're always down there in the evenings, so it's nice. And, just listening and whatever. And same thing in October of 2024, we had this last year, we had a lot of howling, crashing through the woods, like sounding like a bulldozer out there with no noise, just tearing down, just really making a mess. Tree knocks, jibber jabber. That was this year. And then my friends had driven in the driveway here. They just drove in, and before they got there, I was listening to it. And then I kind of went back in the shop and let it go. And then they drive in, and he comes up and he goes, man, what's going on out there in the woods? And I go, you hear that? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, I guess they're having a good time out there. I don't know, but it's just kind of crazy. But every month it's like we have something going on. And then it might go a month or two in the wintertime where we don't have anything, but it's really active. And I'm sure it's one family of them, from what I can probably tell. Like I said, we've never had an actual sighting of any of them yet. I'm open to it, and I haven't gifted them anything yet. I haven't even gone to that point of doing that. They're very, very intelligent. I don't call them animals. I call them people of the woods. And I just, they're not an animal. They're too intelligent. I truly believe they're clairvoyant. I believe that they can see the future. I mean, I really do. I believe that they can read our minds. They're way more intelligent than we are. And just, watching the shows and all the new info that comes out and people's incidences and that. And I've never encountered one out in this area, but when I was a kid, we were up cutting firewood, and we had a flatbed truck, and the bed of the truck sits about 5.5 feet in the air. And that's where we were sleeping that night. So we were laying down that night, and we had like the foam pads. We were laying on the bed of the truck, and we were sleeping there. And before we went to bed, and we heard something come out of the woods to the right of us there, and it's probably about 50 feet away. And we saw a silhouette come out of those. It was a full moon. We saw a silhouette come out of the woods. And no, we had flashlights, but we didn't want to dare shine it on it. And the person that came out, the Sasquatch that came out, and this was the first time I ever had anything to deal with my life. We're on that bed 5.5 feet, and we're looking above us. It was probably another 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet taller than the bed of the truck. And that's when I became a believer. And then over on Alder Lake up by Mount Rainier, I used to live up there. I used to live off Skate Creek Road years ago. And as a kid, you know, it's like 16, 17, we used to go over to Alder Lake, and they have an island out there, a big island. And back then, I don't know if it is now, but the only time you could camp on this island on the beach was in August, because the lake would be lower and the beach would expose itself, and you could camp on it. So we'd go over there and camp. Well, we were over there with a friend of mine, and we hiked up through the woods in there, and in the woods. And, you know, I didn't realize this until just a few years ago, but there were skeletons of animals everywhere in this whole area. It was like small alders growing in there, tall grass, and just I don't know, there must have been 40, 50 skeletons laying all over the place. And it was totally crazy. It was just, and I thought later on in life, and I was watching a show, and I saw a spot where they were showing this area, and then it came to me that was a killing area that we'd probably seen back then, you know, when I was a kid, you know, up there. Because I mean, it's just crazy. The skeletons were everywhere. But anyway, see what else we got here. Let's see. These are ones here from friends of mine, and I'll tell you this one story. A friend of mine's he's go mushroom hunting up in the Olympics, and from our house, we're close to the Olympics. I mean, as the crow flies, we're within 20 miles of the foothills, 15 miles of the foothills of the Olympics, so we're really close. And a friend of mine goes up there, and so he drives in for miles up in the hills up there, and in his van. He's got a van. And so he'd go up there like late at night, get up there like midnight, 1 in the morning, and to the point where he couldn't drive no more. And he'd spend the night in his van, and then get up in the morning and go mushroom hunting, things like that. Well, he's up there this one year, and so he jumps in the back of his van, and he's got 2 windows in the back of his van. The rest of it's all hard panel van. He's got 2 windows at the very back. And he says, Rick, I'm sitting there, and I'm just kind of nodding out, you know, a little bit. But he's got a gun on him, and he's got chainsaws in the back of this rig, you know, and buckets for getting mushrooms. And he does this all the time. This is not a, you know, just a one incident here. And he's never had any problems ever. So he's sitting there, and he sees a shadow. It's a full moon, and he sees a shadow through the 2 van windows in the back, you know, square windows. And he's thinking, wow, you know. And so he hears something, and all of a sudden he looks up, and there's something staring at him in the window, and it's the head of it was almost didn't take all the window up, but almost took the whole window up. He said he could see the eyes staring at him in the back of the van. And then in the under window at the same time, he saw something else move. So he knew there was more than one. And he said he was just froze, and he wasn't making a sound. And all of a sudden, they started rocking his van. And this went on for like 45 minutes. And they're just rocking it back and forth. And pretty soon, they flip it over up onto its roof. Now, he's sitting on the roof of his van inside. He's scared to death. He doesn't want to shoot because he knows there's more than one. You know, he doesn't know what's going to happen. And they start spinning the van around. And this goes on. They're terrorizing him in this van for like 2.5 hours. And he had a cell phone, but he had no service. He had his gun. He didn't want to use it. You know, he's afraid. So he just sat there like nothing happened. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. Boom. It quit immediately. And so he sits in his van for like another hour and a half. And he waits for it to get light. So it gets light. He gets out of his van. He grabs his cell phone. He grabs his gun, and he starts running. And he says, Rick, I don't know how far I ran, but I ran as fast as I could for as long as I could. He says, I didn't stop. And he said, I finally got to an area where I could get cell service. And he called his wife up. His wife called his friends up, and they came to pick him up. And he said, well, let's go up to your van and get your stuff out of it. And he goes, no, leave my van, leave my stuff. I'm never coming back here again in my life. And he came and he told me the story, and he was shaking when he told it. I mean, he was almost, tears to his eyes. I mean, he's definitely afraid of the woods. He'll never go back. And that was a kind of an, awakening thing that happened to him. And this other one is my grandson, and he's just a good kid. Anyway, he joined the service right out of high school, graduated, and he's a fishing fool. His dad was a guide. His favorite river is the Hoh River up on Olympic Peninsula, and all the rivers up there. He fishes them faithfully. He's a fishing fool. So he goes up on the Hoh and he hikes in quite a ways. Well, he's up there this last year with his dad. And before this happened, we were on a hike at my place, and we're up there, and I find his footprint, and I showed to him, and he goes, yeah, Grandpa, that looks like a footprint, but I'm skeptic. I've got to see to believe. And I said, I understand that. And so this is a month later, and they're sitting on the river, him and his dad, and they're catching and releasing salmon, just one after the other, and just having a good time, father and son out there. And his dad looks at him, and he's upstream from him, my grandson is, and he goes, yeah, Dad. He goes, what is that standing in the middle of the river above you? And he says, Grandpa, I looked to the right, and he said, there was a Sasquatch, Grandpa. And I says, well, I says, how do you know? And he goes, because it was at least 8 feet tall, and it was approximately about 300 yards to the right of him. And he said, I didn't realize how big it was until it turned its back to me. And he said he was like 4.5 feet shoulders were wide. And I said, so what'd you do? And he goes, oh, we packed up, we got out of there. And I forget who they went to, but they went to a gentleman who's checks out the encounters and that, and an older guy up there in the Olympics. And they went and saw him right after that. And he said, oh yeah, you got to see one of the ones up in the whole area. And so they told him about it, but he's definitely a believer now. And I got another one here, and this is from a gentleman that we know. This is a dogman. Now I've always been skeptical of dogman. I've never heard ever in my life. I've been here my whole life in Washington State, and I've never heard of a dogman story. And this is a gentleman who's a retired logger. He's like 79, maybe 80, and he's got a place up there. He's got 30 acres up by the Olympics, and so he's lived up there his whole life, basically, and he's by himself in the house. His wife has passed and everything. This is about 8 months ago, and he's out back of his place, and he's like 50 yards off from his house, I guess, to where the grass ends and it kind of comes into the woods. And he's standing there, and he said something came out of the woods, and it was he says, and it was like 6.5, 7 feet tall. He said it had a huge head on it, and that was the head of a wolf. And he said we sat there and stared at each other for like 2 minutes. And he said he was scared because he knew he was 50 yards from his back door to his house, and the animal was like 40 yards in front of him, and he knew there's just no way he could turn around and run fast enough without the animal getting him before he hit the back door. And he said, I just stared at it. He says, and we looked at each other for like 2 minutes. I said, 2 minutes, you sure? And he goes, it was every bit of 2 minutes. We stared at each other, and he says, all of a sudden it walked into the woods. And I thought, wow. And I said, you're sure? So I had him draw a picture of it. I wanted to see what he drew. And he drew a dogman. And I've never heard of an incident in Washington at all. And I'm kind of a skeptic to that, but there's too many stories that you hear, but that was kind of strange. I thought I'd share that with you, but that's about it. That's about where we're at right now, and what we've had encounters we've had.
Rick, those are simply incredible accounts. I mean, just what you're experiencing alone on your property is some wild stuff, and it seems to be very consistent over more than a few years. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's first been going on quite a while. And like I said, we're still having incidences. I mean, I'm sure they'll carry on. You know, I'm going to start documenting a little more and but everybody in this area up here, I mean, is a believer pretty much. Everybody has weird things going on. You drive up this road and it's, you know, it's country all the way out. And, you know, you see people, they got their plywood cutouts of Sasquatch, you know, sitting in the woods and things. And so it's a normal thing in this area. I mean, it's nothing new. It's been going on for years, but yeah, it's kind of neat.
I wanted to double check when you had your experience when you were cutting firewood and you were sleeping in the truck bed. What general area was that again?
That was up by Mount Rainier.
Okay.
That would be up out of the LB area. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And they have mass sightings in that area up there. You know, yeah.
Totally. The area that you're in around Oakville, we're trying to think of how to ask this. Do you guys have a fair amount of neighbors around you, or is it you're in an area where it's not so much? It's kind of remote.
It's rural. I mean, we have like, you know, you might like we're kind of like the last one. So I mean, we have one neighbor to the right, left of us there, but then there's nothing for miles, you know, beyond that. But yeah, it's a rural area. I mean, there's, you know, you got neighbors. Sometimes they're across the street. Sometimes they're a mile down the road. You know, it's really we have an Oakville address, but it's actually outside Rochester's where we're at. So we're real close to Centralia, Chehalis, you know, that whole area out there. So that's where we're closer to. Yeah, but I mean, they have them. I mean, Oakville has their share too. I mean, it's just, you know, you got the Capitol Forest right there. It has mass sightings every year. You know, so it's kind of like the whole area out here, and it's so close to the Olympics as far as a crow flies. You know, we're 15 miles to the foothills. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a conversation with any of your neighbors to see if they're experiencing similar things on their property?
Yeah, I have, and they've not as much as what we hear, because we're kind of like at the end. Mm-hmm. So from us is there's nothing behind us, you know, and I mean, it just goes, like I said, it's just miles and miles of woods all the way out. So, but they all have seen, you know, different things and had different things happening to them. I mean, I hit a deer here this last winter. We hear deer all the time under. It's crazy, but this last year winter, and something was chasing it, because when it came out of the woods, we locked eyes. It was coming out the right side in front of me, and we locked eyes at each other, and it hit the side of my rig, and it broke its neck. I stopped. I turned around. I went back, and it was laying there. And went home and told the wife, and I said, I'm going to go back and get it, you know, because it just broke its neck, you know, and in state here you can do that, you know. So I figured nothing else would bring it back and have some venison. I went back to get it, and it was gone. And something was chasing it through the woods. I don't know. It could have been a cougar too. We saw a cougar with one in its mouth here across the road here 2 weeks ago. So, you know, it could have been a cougar or whatever, but it's kind of strange, you know. But I remember seeing its eyes right before it hit me, and its eyes were, and you could tell it was in fear, you know, before then. But yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Have you ever experienced anything that could potentially be related to an infrasound incident on your property?
No, I haven't, and I'm always open to that too. But I haven't had anything like that yet. No.
Gotcha.
Like I said, everything's been real, you know, non-evasive, you know, in any way threatening. Some people might take that, you know, the rock throwing or whatever as a threat, but it wasn't, you know, you could tell it wasn't deliberate. It was just letting you know they're here, you know.
And, you know, Rick, it might be even better that you're not. I mean, if you think of, I'm trying to think of a good situation where infrasound has been used, and I can't think of many. Usually it's to try to get a person out of there. I don't know if listeners have any ideas about, you know, times when infrasound was used, you know, to cause a good thing, feel free to let me know. But that might mean that they look at you in a good way. Who knows? That's all conjecture. But
Right. I do. I almost take it like as a threat, almost
uh-huh.
at that point. And that's why I've never pushed that. And that's kind of why I haven't even gifted yet, is because I don't, I don't, I'm still studying up on it now, and I don't know how far I want to bring this, but I definitely would sit down and have a sighting with one. I mean, I'm open to anything. I'm open, whatever I can do, but I just haven't had the right. I guess I just haven't been pushed or felt that it's right yet, But I'm open to that, and I'm hoping for it.
Absolutely. Have you ever tried to record any audio on your property of them?
No, no, I haven't, because I was not set up, but I'm just getting set up now. So I'm gonna have some recordings, I'm sure, and I've got game cameras, and I haven't even put those out yet because that they can see that infrared or whatever, so I don't want to push them away. I don't want to take photos or like I'm trying to trick them into photos. I don't want to create any mistrust. I'm just kind of working this real slow and seeing, see what happens.
Yeah, there's so many different viewpoints of that. I think, maybe if you put game cams up, that might have an effect of, there might not be as much activity around the house. As you said yourself, the IR
Right.
most people right now are thinking they can see that in some ways. But if you had like a Tascam audio recorder, that might be interesting, or just any
Audio.
basic audio recorder, really.
Yeah. Audios would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel like there's any instances that have happened where there's been communication between the two groups on your property? The two groups being yourself and the actual Sasquatch group?
Other than, other than letting us know they're there. I mean, they're definitely not shy, and they, like, when they're hooting and hollering and jibber jabber, you're hearing that going on out there. I mean, it's loud. I mean, it's nothing like they're trying to come, and it's right alongside of us. I mean, sometimes it's only 15, 20 feet inside the woods, and but they blend in so well. I mean, it's I'm sure that I've probably looked right at them and never seen them, but I've never, maybe I just haven't noticed it, but they're not shy about letting you know that they're right there. Definitely, for that. And they know that we're not scared of them. Even the wife, I told her from the beginning, because it used to scare her, and I said, don't be scared. I said, just say hi and wave and slowly walk away. Never run, just slowly walk and be nice, So that's what we're trying to do. But it reminds me of a story that you're bringing up over by. This is a documented story, and this by BFRO too, but over beach area in the coast of Washington, over by the Oregon border. And this gentleman and his dad, they live out there on a piece of property, 5 acres, and it's in a rural area, real rural area. It's all gravel road out there and that. But the story of, they had this family that was interacting with him, and they would give, I don't know, maybe you remember the story or heard it, but where he makes peanut butter sandwiches and he put it on a plate out there, and they had these old cars out back, and he laid on it, and then they'd eat the sandwiches, and then they'd put the plate back on another car, and to always put it on the other car. Well, BFR's out there this one time, they're investigating it, and he was out of white bread, so he made it on wheat, and they didn't like wheat bread. They threw the sandwiches away and put the plate on a different vehicle. But anyway, this gentleman, it was him and his dad. His dad's kind of disabled, but anyway, the father, I guess it's like a father and his lady, and they have a teenage daughter, and a teenage son, and he's a big boy, and they're on their backyard one day, and he walks out of the woods, and he's standing there, and so his dad gets up and looks at his son and looks at the Squatch and says, "Hi, my name is such and such." He points to him, and and this is my son, and he says his name, and his son stands up, and they shake hands, and they do this like 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden the Bigfoot raises his hand. And he's 20 feet from him, but he raises his hand like he wants to shake their hand. And the kid says, "Is everything you do just to hold himself back?" Because he wanted to go over and do that. But he says, I just couldn't get myself to do it. I mean, that's that's just, that's crazy. But, imagine being in that and seeing that,
That I've never heard that one. That is absolutely fascinating. I'm going to need to research that to see if I can find if there's like a BFRO report on that, or I can.
I could go look at it. I can find it and I can tell you where to go.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
find that sighting. Yeah, but that should be on a BFR report because BFR was up there for, I guess, a weekend. I guess we went up there a couple weekends and researching. He's up that one weekend. He's sitting there talking to a neighbor, getting her mail at the mailbox, and he looks up the road and one crossed the road right in front of him there. And it talked about how they come up there, like they'll show up on Monday and they'll be gone by Thursday because all the people come up for the weekend. And so as soon as the people leave for the weekend, then they'll show them, they'll be up there running around. But yeah,
wow,
pretty interesting.
And this is all in that Long Beach area?
Yeah, Long Beach area.
Interesting.
Yeah. Kind of like last night I was listening to your podcast about the gentleman who stopped his car in the middle of the road, and we listen to you every night. We don't even watch TV. That's all we do is we watch your podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Every night. But, yeah. But anyway, that gentleman said him and his dad saw that sighting and they stopped traffic, there in Columbia River.
I was just thinking about that because it's not too far away from where we're talking about right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That was pretty cool. Good story. Yeah.
That was good stuff.
I enjoyed that one. Yeah.
You've mentioned what you say is jibber jabber a few times. Have you ever heard anything else like that anywhere else?
No, I haven't. This is other than that sighting as a kid. I mean, I lived up in Ashford for years too, and I just wasn't aware to everything, but I really didn't have anything until we actually moved here. So no, I can't say that I have.
And have you heard the Sierra sounds from Ron Moorhead?
Yes. Aren't those cool?
Yeah.
I mean, that's in. There's another story I know about that too. This gentleman was, and that's up in, let's see, where was he? I think he was up in that same area, close to there. Him and his two daughters, and they got chased out of the woods. They went up camping and they got chased out of the woods. And this man's big. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. He's a big boy, this gentleman. And anyway, he's a school teacher. He got chased out with his two daughters, and they got in the car and they drove out. Well, it changed his life. He quit his job as a school teacher and he became a full-time investigator. Well, he went up with two other people, and they brought 3 chairs and they sat back to back, so they had their backs covered. You know what I mean? So all 3 backs were, and they were looking out the woods. And he said the same thing. These lights came in, and these long rectangular lights, and they circled them. This one light beam, and it was circling him, and all of a sudden it went back into the woods, and look, and all of a sudden they see this Bigfoot, and he's big. I mean, they said he's every bit at 10 foot tall, and he's a big man. So he stood up, and he's looking at, and it comes at a run at him at a full run. Squatch does, and he says right before it was going to hit him, run him over, it went invisible, went through his body, and then showed itself and kept on running. That's crazy. And this is a school teacher, ex-school teacher telling this story. And that's on I believe that's on BFR. I'll see if I can find that one for you too, and I'll tell you where to go to find that one. But that was a really interesting story, and it talks about more of his encounters too. But it's kind of like the same thing in Sierra Woods. You remember he's talking about that, where that beam of light would come in when they'd be up there and kind of circle them. Yeah. That is. I mean, that's super wild stuff. I mean, that's stuff I really like hearing about, because that's why I said I believe they're totally clairvoyant and all that. I believe, but they're so much more intelligent than we are. It's crazy. I believe. And more and more comes out every day.
I'll tell you this: like the more I do this, and the more people I talk to, the less and less I think is actually crazy. I mean, it is quite evident that there's something going on. We have no idea what it is.
Right.
Absolutely no idea. And then it just keeps building and building and building, and maybe someday we'll figure it out. But it is probably the craziest thing that this world has ever seen. Once we figure it out, if we ever do. Hold on. We just had a disconnected call.
Hi, Jeremiah. I lost you there for a moment.
Hey, Rick, no problem. We're used to weird phone issues here, so don't worry about it.
I had to drive down the road 5 miles to talk to you here, because our service, our service is so bad out there. But yeah, you're right, and I believe that we're learning more and more, and I just have an open mind. I've always been this way. I've always said, people tell you wildest stories, and then another person will say, "Oh, that's that's bull crap. I don't believe that." And I always tell them, I said, "You know what? You don't know. We don't know. Be open minded. Don't
Absolutely.
say either way. Just leave your mind open, because it's otherwise you miss a lot. And but I'm open to anything. If one held it out as a hand, if I had one hold its hand out to shake, I think I'd have to go up and do it. I really would. I'm at the age of my, I'm in my late 60s now, so nothing really scares me anymore. So
Right. It sounds like you get to a point and you're like, yeah, whatever, let's go for it. I'm kind of already there myself, but so just to double check, the jibber jabber is not similar to the Sierra sounds then.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it sounds a lot like that. Yeah. Almost identical. It's almost like it's almost like an English, but it's not. It's almost like you almost tell what they're saying, but you can't. But it's the sound levels are crazy. The deep, the high pitch. Yeah, pretty wild.
Do you still have contact with your mushroom hunter friend?
Yes, I do. It's sparse, but yes, we do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would imagine he probably doesn't like talking about that. I mean, it probably just was traumatizing to a great degree.
It was traumatizing. He's an older gentleman. I don't know. I'll definitely ask him, Jeremiah. I'll talk to him. I'll ask him, because I think his story needs to be told. And
absolutely.
And I asked him permission to share it with you, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead. You had no problem with that." But I'll definitely ask him. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anything happen inside your house, or is it just outside?
Just outside. I have, I've heard stories, where marbles will all of a sudden show up, at the kitchen table or whatever. I've had nothing inside the house. I've had them right at the window. I know that for a fact, and I'm sure they're watches through the windows all the time. But and I'm not threatened by that. I don't, that doesn't threaten me in any way, or the wife. We're open to that. But that's, I believe that really they sit out. It's like us going to a movie, we all get together and we sit down and watch a movie. I truly believe that's what they do. They probably sit out there, and because there's spots you can go out there and see where something's been sitting, and they've got a direct view in our house, and I truly believe that that's what they do. It's like an evening fun time, and watching us is like watching a movie, something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy, but that's what I truly believe.
Rick, I have two more questions. One is, before we start to end out the show, was there anything else that you wanted to share? Just making sure that we were able to get everything that you wanted to share today.
No, I think we got it. I think we got most of it here. So perfect. Yeah, and I'll keep you in touch. As the incidents go, I'm going to start dating them down to the day now, and bettering documentation here, because and I'm going to definitely set up some recordings. So
that'd be great.
As I get that, I'll let you know where I'm at. So
and lastly, Rick, do you have any advice for people that have what seems to be a group of Bigfoot on their property, on how best to deal with them?
Yeah, I would definitely say be calm and be open. And how scared you are. I know how people can get scared, to the point where they want to move, whatever. But I don't believe that. I believe that the majority, and I'm talking above 95%, are all non-threatening. I believe that they're, because I've heard stories, but I believe that there's a percentage that, like we have bad, we have human beings that are not so good, you know what I mean? And I believe that probably that they have that going on too. But as long as you're not feeling threatened in any way or whatever, then be open and hey, they're just, they're people of the woods. They're, they have families. Treat them with respect, and I think that what they learn will be mind blowing. So just don't fear, and people need to wake up a little bit and be a little more of what's around them, and life's a great thing. And this is exciting stuff. I mean, obviously you feel the same way, and it's crazy. I just love it. I love it every day, So I'm looking to spend more of my retired life into researching more and more.
There you go. That's great advice, and I think a great way to end the show. But Rick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and for sharing what you've experienced at different points in your life. And I look forward to hearing back from you in the future as well. But thank you for coming on, friend.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Have a good day. Thanks for having me.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. Number 1, encounters from Franklin County, Texas. Number 2, encounters from the entire state of Iowa. Number 3, encounters from Oak Ridge, Oregon, or the surrounding area. Number 4, any individuals that know about Bigfoot being flown off after the Mount St. Helens eruption. Number 5, individuals that have had a Bigfoot encounter while in the military. Number 6, those that have had a Bigfoot encounter in the southern New Hampshire or north central Massachusetts area, including Franklin County, Massachusetts. Number 7, individuals that have had a Bigfoot encounter in a Bible camp or Boy Scout camp setting. Number 8, individuals that have had Bigfoot try to enter their house forcibly while they were living inside. Number 9, individuals that have actively have a Bigfoot living on their property. And lastly, any sightings that are in the Ouachita National Forest area of Oklahoma or Arkansas. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one. If you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.